Hello, Jack Blum. Happy National Canadian Film Day.
Hello, Marla. Happy National Canadian Film Day to you and all of your members.
Thank you. I'm sure our supporters are very happy to be here, as are we. This is a very auspicious occasion, in your 10-year anniversary. So we're very happy to have partnered with you at this time for this film in particular. So I got to ask Jack, tell me about Real Canada. Like, how did you get here? How did this all begin?
Oh, goodness. I'll try to keep that very, very brief. Real Canada started by bringing Canadian film into high schools. That was like 18 years ago. And then we expanded outside of Toronto, spread across the country, delivered our programs in French and English. We started delivering new Canadian film to new Canadians who were learning English. We developed an Indigenous film program to reach those communities and serve those audiences. And then in 2014, because we're a little insane, we started National Canadian Film Day. And you laugh, but it is insane. We just felt that Canadians don't get the chance to see their stuff. And furthermore, they want to. And so we went out and started saying it's National Canadian Film Day, host a screening, show Canadian film to your community. And the first year in 2014, we had 70 screenings across the country, and we thought we were something. We thought that's really big.
That sounds like something.
And now it does sound like something. And now it's almost too big to see, because on April 19th, today, National Canadian Film Day, there's almost 1,500 screenings across the country and 125 screenings around the world in 45 different countries. So when I say we're insane, I'm not joking. And it's just, we felt it was really, really important to try to give Canadians the opportunity to watch something, and to watch something because it's Canadian, and to enjoy that and to celebrate it, which is what so rarely happens in this country.
Well, that's an incredible accomplishment. So hats off to you and your team.
Thank you. But tell me then, tell me about Friends, which is an organization I love. How come it's important for Friends to jump in on this occasion?
It really was such a natural fit. You talk about Canadians getting to see their own stuff. And, that's kind of exactly what we do at Friends at a sort of more higher level policy sort of way that we accomplish that. Our goal is to protect and promote Canadian voices in Canadian media. That's it in a nutshell. And that protection and promotion of our culture, of our identity, well, that happens through the sharing of our stories, which is exactly what you're doing. It's also one of the reasons why, as a lot of our supporters will know, but maybe some of your members won't, that, one of our key priorities at Friends is to defend the CBC, who has the greatest responsibility of all for sharing our stories from coast to coast to coast. And, today's film is a really wonderful reminder about the power of putting, the right story in the right person's hand at the right time. And it actually really reminds me, I don't know if you know this about me, Jack, but my days of working at the video store, which I did through all of my teenage years. And I think definitely spawned my career in this business. And, that sense of community we build when we share our stories and when we see ourselves reflected back to us. And I just think that, what you're doing really dovetails nicely into what we're doing. Yours is sort of boots on the ground and ours is kind of up here. And so I guess a question, you sort of alluded to this, but, we're talking about National Canadian Film Day. But can you tell me a bit more what goes on at Real Canada? I mean, obviously, it's more than just one day, and it's a lot of work to get there, clearly, with the numbers you just gave us. But could you tell us a little bit more about how you're sharing these Canadian stories, sort of every other day of the year?
Absolutely. But I will just jump in on something that you said about the CBC. Because of the film tonight, because we're honoring Gordon Pinsent, a giant, giant talent who simply would not exist without the CBC. It was the CBC that gave him all of those opportunities to make this work, to the point where he could write a story like John and the Missus, and it could be produced. And this is one of the reasons that the CBC is so important, and how this is an example of what the CBC makes possible. It's a whole ecosystem. And if we don't develop our talent on all the levels at young ages and let them grow here in Canada, we don't end up with films like John and the Missus. So that was, I just wanted to say that.
Oh, absolutely. That's a point. You've made that point for me, and hopefully, again, our supporters and yours understand the importance of the CBC for that reason, because especially with what I'm sure we're going to get to talking about foreign players in the system, how that impacts our ability to tell our stories. We can get to that in a bit, but that makes the CBC more critical than ever. So tell me more about Real Canada.
So to answer your question, we started with young people, and honestly, it was because we got so tired of people talking about, oh, Canadian film isn't very good. And it's like, there's great Canadian film. We love Canadian film. And there's a lot of great Canadian TV. So we thought, let's start with young people. If we could show the industry that young people really will respond to this, if we get a chance to show it to them, maybe we could have an impact. And it's remarkable. It's a remarkable experience over the course of 18 years, just what's happening in classrooms now compared to what was happening in classrooms then. But certainly a commonality is they're not getting much Canada in their lives. They really aren't. So we started with that. That program now reaches thousands of teachers a year across the country in French and English, K to 12. So it's a pretty big foundational part of what we do. The other program that we just love is the Welcome to Canada program, where we reach teachers who are teaching new Canadians English, and they get our catalog, they look at it in their classrooms, so as a language learning exercise, they read the descriptions of the films, and then they pick a film to see, and then they come and watch a film together, and then they meet someone from the film. We showed them once to an audience of 500 newcomers in Tiff Bell Lightbox. We showed them Away from Her, starring Gordon Pinsent. And I spoke to them at the beginning, and I said, tell me some of you, because they're from 200 countries around the world. It's the most remarkable gathering. And I said, tell me who when you were 10 years old, who was on the big screen that was your hero? And they stood up, this one from Syria, this one from the Ukraine, this one from Brazil, wherever it was. And they talked about these actors that I'd never heard of. And then I got to say, well, the star of this film that you're about to see was my hero when I was 10 years old, watching Quentin Durgan's MP on TV. And you're going to meet him after the screening. And when he came on after that movie, it was like they were meeting God, and it's just it's such a heartful, wonderful experience to welcome them to this country with a story. And it just is a testament to the power of what the stories we tell mean, right? What they do. So, I mean, we also prepare young people for if they're interested in working in film, because the film industry is growing, Canadian film industry, and needs people, and there's so many jobs that they're not aware of. So we do that as well. That's slightly less the cultural mandate, but in a way, we have to keep the film industry here healthy, which is involves many things. On our main mandate, it involves making sure there's an audience, but it also makes sure we have to make sure there's people to work in it. So we do that as well.
Well, that's great. I love this idea that you're building these community with newcomers and sort of ingratiating them to Canadian culture. Obviously we have a long history in this country of preserving our own cultures and then tying new ones in. And I think this is a great bridge to that. And I love the setup you gave to Gordon Pinsent being your hero. So good for you on that one. And, I just think that the more people that we can involve sort of in our cause, and I say our cause, I mean the Friends cause, you being involved in Canada, the better, because I truly think that we have really arrived at a key moment in our nation's cultural policy. And, Canadian stories really matter more now than ever. And if you'll allow me to sort of wax poetically about policy a bit here, I think it's important for people to understand why. And that is,
Marla, only you could wax poetic about policy, but I want to hear it.
Okay, well, so, for essentially the last decade, our government has allowed, foreign streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon to essentially extract billions of dollars in Canadian subscriber revenues without any of the regulatory obligations that their Canadian competition faces. So I'm not talking here like corporate tax and HST, those are issues in and of themselves, but those are drops in the bucket. What I'm talking about is what we really have in the sort of Canadian broadcasting system is a very unlevel playing field right now, where, you know, CBC, CTV, Global, Canadian broadcasters, they all have to spend a certain amount of, you know, money on their regulatory obligations to make Canadian programming, the kind of Canadian programming that you're showing to all of your supporters and our supporters here today as well. And the foreign streamers do not have similar obligations. What did we call it? You know, we've been advocating for what I'm going to talk about in a second, Bill C-11. We called it crashing on our cultural couch. That was what Friends called it. So, you know, those regulatory spends that the Canadian broadcasters have, they help ensure our stories continue to be told. They help ensure the next generation, like you're talking about, of Gordon Pinsent, has a chance to thrive, survive, succeed, all those things. So now here we are 10 years into this sort of unlevel playing field mess. And we now finally have a government prepared to act in the form of Bill C-11, what's called the Online Streaming Act. And it's currently making its way through Parliament. It's almost done. We're waiting for the Senate to pass it, and then it will go to royal assent. And, you know, through this piece of legislation, our country's finally going to be requiring financial contributions from the likes of Amazon and Disney and Netflix. And those will help sustain the creative industries that you talk about. You know, the industry here, we're called Hollywood North for a reason. But at the same time, you know, drive investment and innovation in the creation of Canadian content, the content that continues to reflect our diversity of voices and who we are as Canadians. I mean, at the end of the day, the bottom line is we share the longest international border with the most dominant and prolific producer of entertainment content in the world. And unfortunately, we have the same accent for the most part, and we speak the same language. So that makes it very difficult to distinguish ourselves from them. And for better or for worse, that content has an incredible influence over our culture. So thankfully, history has taught us that we must, you know, if we fail to protect and promote our culture and identity, it's just a recipe for foreign domination, which has been happening as a result of this last 10 years of mess that I'm talking about. So, you know, with Bill C-11, it used to be called C-10. It's taken a long time to get here. Now it's called Bill C-11. You know, with that bill, our stories, our identity, and basically our cultural sovereignty, you know, will be allowed to continue. And that's really why this moment is so important for us.
It is extremely important. Where we see ourselves in that framework is very simple. Canadian culture, Canadian content depends on public support. We're a very small population. We need public support, and that doesn't make us particularly distinguished. Have a look. The oil industry gets public support. So why the hell shouldn't, pardon me, the Canadian cultural industries get public support? And we take our mission as, if we need public support, we had better have the support of the public. And that means getting the public engaged in our content, making sure they see it, making sure they enjoy it, making sure they understand it. It's there, they want it, they embrace it when they get the opportunity, and finding it through the thicket of these giant services that do us no favors in terms of saying, hey, here's a Canadian film. It's actually pretty wonderful. It's hard enough finding anything on those things, let alone Canadian stuff. So visibility, awareness, accessibility, and those things are all things that C-11 touches, and we feel are very, very important.
And those are therefore all things that we touch, which brings us right back to where we started, which was this natural fit between our two organizations. And so I really am thrilled to share this moment with you. I mean, it's a very small part that we're sharing with you. This is your day, and we want to congratulate you on this day and your success. And yeah.
Thank you. I'll end with one little remark about all of this stuff about cultural sovereignty that my partner Sharon Corder, the co-founder of Real Canada, says to kids when she's talking to an auditorium full of kids. She says, movies, these stories, they're like our dreams. And just imagine going to bed every night and dreaming about the people down the street only, and never being in your own dreams. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to protect our collective dreams so that we can be in them. and not just always be talking about the people down the street. So I'll leave you with that. Happy National Canadian Film Day, and I hope everyone enjoys this absolutely sensational film, John of the Misses. It's a real masterwork by Gordon Pinson.
Well, thank you, and happy National Canadian Film Day, Jack.